Rosa Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she pushed the heavy cleaning cart down the long hallway of the Riverside Music Academy. It was almost 9 p.m., and the building was finally quiet. The last of the music students had gone home hours ago, leaving behind empty practice rooms and the lingering smell of rosin and sheet music. For 15 years, Rosa had walked these same halls every evening. She knew every crack in the marble floor, every squeaky door hinge, and every water stain on the ceiling. At 67 years old, her back ached from bending over to clean, and her hands were rough from years of scrubbing and polishing. But Rosa never complained. She was grateful to have steady work, even if it meant being invisible to most people who walked past her. The academy was filled with wealthy kids whose parents paid thousands of dollars for private lessons. These teenagers would rush past Rosa without even looking at her, their expensive violins and designer backpacks marking them as part of a world she could never enter. The teachers weren't much better. They would nod politely when they saw her, but Rosa could tell they saw her as just another piece of furniture in their prestigious school. What none of them knew was Rosa's secret. Every night after she finished cleaning the main offices and hallways, she would make her way to the practice rooms. She would crack open the doors just slightly and listen to the beautiful music that seemed to float through the walls like magic. Rosa had been doing this for years. She would stand in the doorway, her mop bucket beside her, and close her eyes as student after student played their pieces. She heard everything, the mistakes, the corrections, the moments when everything came together perfectly. Slowly, without even realizing it, she began to understand how the music worked. At home in her small apartment, Rosa would sit at her kitchen table after dinner. She would place her weathered hands on the wooden surface and move her fingers as if she were playing piano keys. She practiced the pieces she had heard that day, moving her hands in the patterns she remembered. Her neighbors probably thought she was a little crazy, sitting there playing invisible piano, but Rosa didn't care. She had always loved music, even as a little girl growing up in a poor family. Her parents worked in the fields and could barely afford food, let alone piano lessons. Rosa used to dream of sitting at a beautiful piano, wearing a fancy dress, playing for people who would clap and smile. But life had other plans. She got married young, had children, worked hard jobs to pay the bills. The dream got pushed aside, buried under years of responsibility and survival. Now at 67, Rosa thought those dreams were long gone. She was just a cleaning lady in a fancy music school, someone people looked through rather than at. She told herself she was being silly, pretending to play piano on her kitchen table. Real musicians started when they were children. They had expensive lessons and proper training. They didn't learn by sneaking around and listening through cracked doors. But still, every night Rosa found herself drawn back to those practice rooms. The music called to her in a way she couldn't explain. It made her feel alive, connected to something bigger than her daily routine of emptying trash cans and mopping floors. She would stand there, listening, and for just a few minutes, she could forget about her aching back and rough hands. For just a few minutes, she could imagine what it would feel like to create that beautiful sound herself. Little did Rosa know that soon, very soon, she would get the chance to find out. The Riverside Music Academy was buzzing with excitement like Rosa had never seen before. Tonight was the annual Spring Gala, the biggest fundraising event of the year. For weeks, Rosa had watched workers transform the main concert hall into something that looked like a palace. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting dancing lights across the polished marble floors. Round tables covered in white cloth filled the space, each decorated with beautiful flower arrangements that probably cost more than Rosa made in a month. The stage was set with a magnificent grand piano that gleamed under the bright spotlights. Rosa arrived early that evening as she always did, but tonight, instead of her usual cleaning uniform, she wore a simple black dress and white apron. The academy had hired her to help serve drinks and appetizers to the fancy guests. Rosa was nervous about being around all these important people, but she needed the extra money. As the evening began, expensive cars pulled up to the front entrance. Men in perfectly tailored suits and women in glittering evening gowns stepped out, laughing and chatting as they made their way inside. Rosa recognized some faces from magazines and local news, business owners, politicians, and celebrities who supported the arts. She moved quietly through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne and tiny sandwiches that looked almost too pretty to eat. The guests barely noticed her, which was nothing new. They were too busy talking about their vacation homes, their children's achievements, and their latest business deals. Rosa couldn't help but listen to some of their conversations. One woman bragged about her daughter's acceptance to a famous music school in Europe. Another man complained about how much he was spending on his son's violin lessons, even though the boy had no real talent anyway. Rosa felt a familiar ache in her chest. These people had everything money could buy, including musical opportunities they took for granted. The concert program was impressive. Student performers played complicated pieces that Rosa recognized from her nighttime listening sessions. Teachers from the academy performed solos that brought polite applause from the well-dressed audience. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. Then disaster struck. The evening's main attraction was supposed to be Professor Williams, a famous pianist who traveled the world giving concerts. He was scheduled to close the show with a performance that everyone was eagerly waiting for. The Academy's director had been bragging about getting such a prestigious musician for their little event. But just as Professor Williams was about to take the stage, he suddenly doubled over in pain. Rosa watched from the corner of the room as several people rushed to help him. Someone called for a doctor, and within minutes it was clear that the professor was seriously sick. Food poisoning, the doctor said. There was no way he could perform tonight. The Academy's director looked like he was about to panic. This concert was supposed to be the highlight of the evening, the moment when wealthy donors would open their wallets and write big checks. Without the star performer, what would they do? Rosa watched as staff members whispered urgently to each other, trying to figure out a solution. Could one of the teachers fill in? Could they find another professional pianist at such short notice? The guests were getting restless, checking their phones and glancing toward the exits. That's when Rosa heard someone make a joke that made her blood run cold. Maybe we should ask the cleaning lady to play something, laughed a man in an expensive suit pointing in Rosa's direction. I bet she knows Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The comment got a big laugh from the people around him. They thought it was hilarious, the idea of the humble cleaning woman trying to play classical piano. Rosa felt her face burn with embarrassment, but she tried to stay invisible, hoping the moment would pass. But something strange was happening inside her chest. Instead of shrinking away, Rosa felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was anger at being mocked. Maybe it was all those nights of secret listening finally building up to this moment. Maybe it was just tired of being invisible. Whatever it was, Rosa surprised everyone in that room, including herself. She stepped forward, her heart pounding like a drum, and said in a quiet but clear voice, "I would be honored to try." The moment Rosa spoke those words, the entire room seemed to freeze. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the waiters carrying trays of food stood still, unsure of what was happening. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then someone in the back started to chuckle. The sound spread like a wave through the crowd, growing louder and more confident. Soon half the room was laughing. Not mean laughter exactly, but the kind of amused giggling that happens when people think they're witnessing something silly. "Oh, this should be interesting," whispered a woman with diamonds sparkling around her neck. She pulled out her phone, ready to record what she clearly expected to be an embarrassing moment she could share with her friends later. "I hope she knows we don't have a children's songbook up there," joked another guest, causing more laughter to ripple through the crowd. Rosa felt every eye in the room focused on her. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she could feel sweat forming on her palms despite the cool air conditioning. Part of her wanted to run away, to disappear back into the kitchen where she belonged. What was she thinking? These people were right to laugh. She was just a cleaning lady who had never had a real piano lesson in her life. But then Rosa remembered something. She thought about all those nights standing outside practice room doors, listening to the same pieces over and over until she could hear them in her sleep. She remembered sitting at her kitchen table, moving her fingers through the melodies that lived in her heart. She remembered the little girl she used to be, dreaming of making beautiful music for people to enjoy. The academy director looked absolutely terrified. His face had gone completely white, and Rosa could see him calculating how much money this disaster might cost the school. He clearly wanted to stop her, but didn't know how to do it politely in front of all these important donors. "Ma'am," he said quietly, trying to guide her away from the stage, "perhaps we should just cancel this part of the program." But Rosa had already started walking toward the piano. Her simple black dress and white apron looked so plain compared to the elegant evening gowns around her. Her work shoes made soft sounds on the polished floor as she moved through the crowd. People stepped aside to let her pass, some still chuckling, others looking curious about what would happen next. As she got closer to the stage, Rosa could hear whispered comments from the audience. "This is going to be painful to watch. Should someone stop her before she embarrasses herself? I can't wait to see what she thinks she can play. My 5-year-old probably plays better than this." Each comment stung a little, but Rosa kept walking. She climbed the few steps to the stage, her legs feeling wobbly beneath her. The bright stage lights were much stronger than she had expected, making it hard to see the faces in the audience clearly. Maybe that was a good thing. The piano bench looked both familiar and foreign at the same time. Rosa had seen it hundreds of times while cleaning, had dusted it carefully, and polished its wooden surface. But she had never imagined actually sitting on it, actually playing the beautiful instrument it faced. She sat down slowly, adjusting her position the way she had seen so many students and teachers do over the years. The piano keys stretched out in front of her like a row of perfect white and black teeth. Rosa placed her weathered hands just above the keys, not quite touching them yet. The room had grown quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the hush that comes before a performance, when everyone is waiting to see what will happen. Rosa could feel hundreds of eyes watching her every move. Some people were still smiling, expecting entertainment. Others looked genuinely curious. A few seemed worried that they were about to witness something truly awkward. Rosa closed her eyes for just a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. In her mind, she could hear all the beautiful pieces she had absorbed over the years. Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven. Their melodies were as real to her as her own breathing. She thought about the countless hours she had spent practicing fingering patterns on her kitchen table, dreaming of this exact moment without ever believing it could actually happen. When she opened her eyes again, Rosa knew exactly what she was going to play. It was a piece she had heard a young student practice over and over last month, struggling with its difficult passages until finally mastering them. Rosa had listened to every mistake, every correction, every moment of breakthrough. She knew this piece like she knew her own name. The audience was getting restless. Someone coughed. A chair squeaked. Rosa could feel their impatience, their expectation that she would either play something simple and childish or fail completely and provide them with a story to tell at dinner parties. Rosa Martinez, 67-year-old cleaning lady, took one final deep breath and placed her fingers on the piano keys. The first note that came from the piano was soft and gentle, like a whisper in the wind. Rosa had chosen to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece that required both technical skill and deep emotional understanding. It was not the simple children's song the audience had expected. As her fingers moved across the keys, something magical happened. All the years of listening, all the nights of practicing on her kitchen table, all the melodies that had lived in her heart, they all came flowing out through her hands. The music was pure and beautiful, filled with a tenderness that could only come from someone who had truly understood what it meant to dream of this moment. The laughter in the room died away completely. People who had been smiling and preparing to record a funny video slowly lowered their phones. The woman with the diamond necklace, who had been ready to mock Rosa just moments before, found herself leaning forward in her chair, completely captivated by what she was hearing. Rosa's playing was not perfect in the way that trained concert pianists are perfect. Her technique had small imperfections that a music teacher might notice. But what came from the piano was something far more powerful than technical perfection. It was music that came from the soul, played by someone who understood every note, not just as a sound, but as a piece of human emotion. As the nocturne continued, Rosa began to feel something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her 67 years, she was not invisible. She was not just the cleaning lady, not just the poor woman who emptied trash cans and mopped floors. She was a musician, creating beauty that filled the entire room and touched every person listening. The melody flowed through the complex middle section, where Rosa's fingers danced across the keys with surprising grace. Years of secretly watching students practice this exact passage had taught her every subtlety, every delicate touch needed to make the music sing. Her weathered hands, so used to holding mops and scrub brushes, now held the attention of an entire room full of people who had never really seen her before. In the audience, something remarkable was happening. A businessman who had been checking his email put his phone away completely, drawn into the music despite himself. A teenage girl who had been bored by the evening's formal atmosphere found herself wiping tears from her eyes, though she couldn't explain why. An elderly woman who had donated thousands of dollars to the academy over the years realized she was hearing something more genuine and moving than any performance she had ever attended there. Rosa could feel the change in the room's energy. The mockery and amusement had transformed into something else entirely: respect, wonder, and a growing sense that everyone was witnessing something truly special. She had spent 15 years being invisible to these people, but now, through the language of music, she was finally being heard. The most difficult part of the nocturne approached, a section where the melody climbs higher and higher, requiring both technical precision and emotional intensity. Rosa had heard students struggle with this passage countless times. Some gave up and chose easier pieces. Others practiced for months before they could play it smoothly. But Rosa's version was different from anything she had heard in those practice rooms. She played it with the weight of her life experiences, the dreams deferred, the years of hard work, the quiet dignity she had maintained even when people treated her as if she didn't exist. Every note carried the story of a woman who had never stopped believing in beauty, even when beauty seemed impossible to reach. As the nocturne built toward its emotional peak, several people in the audience were openly crying. These were tears not just of surprise at Rosa's unexpected talent, but of recognition. Recognition of their own assumptions, their own blindness to the possibilities that existed in people they had never really bothered to see. The academy director, who had been terrified about what Rosa might do to the evening's program, stood frozen at the side of the stage. His mouth was slightly open in amazement. This was not just good music. This was extraordinary music played with a depth of feeling that he rarely heard even from his professional faculty members. Rosa was nearing the end of the piece now, bringing the melody back down to earth with the same gentle grace with which it had begun. But she was no longer the same person who had sat down at the piano bench just a few minutes earlier. Something fundamental had changed, not just in her, but in everyone listening. The final notes of the nocturne faded into silence, hanging in the air like the last rays of sunlight at the end of a perfect day. Rosa's hands remained poised above the keys for just a moment, as if she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Then she looked up at the audience for the first time since she had begun playing, and what she saw in their faces told her that her life was about to change forever. For what felt like an eternity, the concert hall was completely silent. Rosa sat at the piano bench, her hands still trembling slightly from the performance, looking out at hundreds of faces that were staring back at her with expressions she had never seen before. Gone were the amused smiles and condescending looks. Instead, she saw wonder, respect, and, in many cases, tears. Then, like thunder breaking after lightning, the applause began. It started with one person clapping, then two. Then suddenly the entire room erupted in the most enthusiastic applause Rosa had ever heard. People were not just clapping politely as they had for the other performers that evening. They were standing up cheering, some even calling out bravo with genuine emotion in their voices. Rosa slowly rose from the piano bench, not quite sure what to do with herself. She had never received applause before, let alone a standing ovation from 200 wealthy, and influential people, she gave a small, humble bow, the way she had seen other performers do, and the cheering grew even louder. Among the crowd, she could see faces that told the whole story of what had just happened. The woman with the diamond necklace, who had been ready to record Rosa's failure just minutes earlier, was now applauding with tears streaming down her cheeks. The businessman who had made the cruel joke about asking the cleaning lady to play was standing and clapping, but his face showed something Rosa had never expected to see: shame mixed with genuine admiration. The academy director rushed onto the stage, his earlier panic replaced by excitement and amazement. He had realized that this unexpected moment had turned into the most memorable performance in the academy's history. The fundraising goal he had been worried about reaching? He could already see donors pulling out their checkbooks, inspired by what they had just witnessed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced into the microphone, his voice shaking with emotion, "I think we have all just experienced something truly extraordinary. Rosa Martinez has been part of our academy family for 15 years, and tonight she has shown us that talent and passion can be found in the most unexpected places." The applause started up again, but Rosa was still trying to process what had happened. As she made her way off the stage, people began approaching her, not to ask her to clean up their spilled drinks or empty their tables, but to shake her hand and tell her how deeply her performance had moved them. "That was the most beautiful thing I've heard in years," said an elderly gentleman who Rosa recognized as one of the Academy's biggest donors. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Rosa smiled softly. "I learned by listening," she said simply. "For 15 years I listened." Word of Rosa's performance spread quickly beyond that night. Someone had recorded the last part of her performance on their phone, and within days the video had been viewed by millions of people around the world. News stations picked up the story of the cleaning lady who shocked a room full of wealthy donors with her hidden musical talent. But the real change came in the days and weeks that followed. The academy director offered Rosa a position as a piano instructor, teaching students who were struggling with their technique and confidence. "You understand music in a way that can't be taught," he told her. "You understand it with your heart." Rosa accepted the offer, but she didn't give up cleaning entirely. She continued to work in the academy's halls, but now it was by choice rather than necessity. She liked the quiet time it gave her to think about music and prepare for her lessons. Plus, she had grown to love the building that had been her home for so many years. Her first student was a young girl named Katie, who had been ready to quit piano lessons because she felt she wasn't talented enough. Rosa worked with her using the same patient listening skills that had taught her to play. Within months, Katie was performing with confidence she had never had before. More students followed, drawn by Rosa's unique teaching style. She didn't just teach technique. She taught them to listen to the music with their hearts, to find the emotion in every piece, to understand that real music comes from genuine feeling rather than perfect execution. The academy established a scholarship fund, in Rosa's name, providing music lessons for children whose families couldn't afford them. Rosa insisted that the program focus not just on finding students who already showed obvious talent, but on nurturing the love of music in anyone who was willing to listen and learn. On quiet evenings, after her students had gone home and the halls were empty again, Rosa would sometimes sit at the grand piano in the concert hall where everything had changed that magical night. She would play softly, thinking about the strange turns life can take and how sometimes the most beautiful moments come when we least expect them. Rosa's story became a reminder to everyone who heard it that talent and passion can be found in the most unexpected places, in people who have been invisible for too long, and that it's never too late to let your dreams find their voice. She proved that music doesn't care about your job title, your bank account, or your formal training. Music only cares whether you truly listen with your heart.